I'm Corbett Wall with USDA Livestock and Grain Market News. Here with your weekly feeder and stocker cattle market summary for the week ending September the 30th, where we had steer and heifer calves of all qualities and classes selling steady to $3 higher, but the hard weaned and preconditioned calves with some kind of a health program and guaranteed weaning date, and what's left of the true yearling cattle that are still out there, they all sold $2 to $5 higher. Instances more than that in certain places. But the gains were pretty much all across the board. The only places statewide that didn't have gains were a couple spots in the southeast that did show advancement last week when hardly anybody else did. But pretty much right across the board saw good gains throughout the week and progressively more towards the end of the week, pretty much all across the nation. But had all kinds of things just supportive for feeder cattle this week. You know, first of all, had that bullish cattle on feed report to come out last Friday that had the placements for August a lot lower than what they had expected. So starting to think that maybe those displaced drought cattle out of Texas and Oklahoma and places, you know, quit a little bit or backed off a little bit sooner than what they thought. And it may someday get to the end of those, but it's getting to the point where maybe we can see past them now and go ahead and start going back to regular business. Had limit gains on Monday's cattle futures, you know, just starting out the week, and had several of them that was up the limit. Lower grains through the week all the way up to Friday when they had the grain stocks report. That grain stocks report come out bearish for grain prices, which is friendly to the cattle feeder, although a lot of guys do both, but end up finding 164 million bushels more corn on hand September the 1st than what most analysts had expected. Not sure where that corn come from, if we didn't use as much as thought we were going to use or what, but you know, it sent the grains tumbling on Friday, so that's even more bullish news for feeder cattle. And then Friday afternoon had that monster fat cattle sales that was $5 higher. You hardly ever see 2 to 3 higher direct fat cattle trade, let alone fully $5 higher. Had 2 weeks of really tough trading there where the packers had the guys right where they wanted them, trading at 116 both weeks there, and there's not nearly as good a market as what we'd hoped for. This week they come out asking $1.20, which is what they mostly put on, $3 or $4 from what they got the week before. And $1.20 asking prices right up till late in the week. And then Friday morning, late in the morning, we saw another big boost in the board, which put your board at about 122.5, and then all of a sudden the 120 wasn't quite enough. And so we bounced that asking price up to 22 and ended up trading the bulk of the cattle at 121, especially in Texas and Kansas. Places in Colorado got 21 and 22. Places in western Nebraska there from 20 to 21, but just a lot of advancement in the fat cattle market this week. But actually our feeder cattle market this week started out a little slow. We expected early calls out of Joplin and Oklahoma City to be sharply higher because the board was so much higher and we had that good cattle on feed report, but actually things were just so sour towards the end of last week that it took all of that cattle on feed report and the bullishness from that just to kind of hold things back steady. Truthful, if we hadn't had that, you know, we'd have probably been in for another rough week of trading there. But USDA grain stocks report come out good, or come out bearish for grains and good for the cattleman that's worried about buying feed. Sent that December corn contract down 40 cents, which made it close under $6 for the first time since 4th of July. They got ideal harvest weather throughout the corn belt. It's really going full steam in the corn belt right now, and just ideal weather. Great temperatures, not for straightening up unweaned calves, but great temperatures for running a combine. It's been dry, no rain to speak of throughout the corn belt. These moisture levels on the corn that they're harvesting are a lot drier than what we've seen the last few years. Guys are not having to do a whole lot of drying of this, not taking a lot of discounts if they want to sell it, you know, right off the bin there. But we didn't expect harvest pressure on this corn market and bean market too, but we've definitely got harvest pressure. Had a good market throughout the week on the feeder cattle, really starting to get good there towards the end of the week. Expectations are really high for next week after this fat cattle trade on Friday afternoon. But just give you an idea, you know, most of those lower southern feedlot areas down the Texas Panhandle, western Oklahoma, and southwest Kansas, you know, they've got the bulk of those drought calves in them. They're fairly full. They don't have a whole lot of available feed. They're having to put a whole lot of freight under it to get them to them. And then you come up north in the Nebraska areas, you got a lot of independent feeders that are coming into the market as this grain cheapens up. If your farmer feeders are wanting to buy some cattle, they want what they want and they're willing to pay for it. And just give you an idea, we've got 3 strings of cattle. Had a load in Amarillo, Texas at the sale barn there at the Amarillo Livestock Auction. Weighed 663. Number 1 steers brought 137.35. Nice price there, nobody can complain about that. You come about 600 miles to the north at the Mocan Livestock Market right there on the Missouri-Kansas border near Butler, Missouri. Had a reputation string of steers, 102 in one bunch, weighed 666, almost identical, and they bring 148.35, which, you know, really starts to perk some ears up. But then you go up to Valentine, Nebraska, in that sandhill country. Got a lot of farmer feeders in that area. Going to be some corn that they can't sell that they want to feed. Had another load there at Valentine, weighed 662, almost identical, bring 159.85. And that's just astronomical. So that goes to show you who's got the advantages in feeding cattle right now. Those cattle are all just cattle. You know, I'm sure the northern cattle are going to be a little fancier, but those cattle probably won't have cost of gains a whole lot different, and they'll bring exactly the same whenever they're fat. But look at the regional weighted averages this week. In the north central states, 800 to 900 pound steer this week cost you $131.47. Last week, $130.49. A year ago, $108.65. Down the south central states, 7 to 8 weight steer cost you $134.06 compared to $131.41 last week and $110.55 a year ago. And a 6 weight steer in the southeast, averaging around $6.50, cost you $120.87 compared to $120.42 last week and $98.37 a year ago. That wraps up your market for this week. Check out our website, marketnews.usda.gov. From the Regional Market News Office in St. Joe, Missouri. We'll talk to you next week.